giving my client good advice based upon solid financial statements that I produce or somebody else does, but typically you do. I want to be able to give them advice on how they can make their future better.
I love bookkeeping.
Howdy, howdy. It's Ben Robinson and welcome to I Love Bookkeeping. Today we're going to be talking about how you can transition over to advisory services, or how you can layer this atop what you're already doing, right? Providing those financial statements. Now, advisory services, let's go ahead and define what I mean by that. And it's pretty simple. Giving my client good advice based upon solid financial statements that I produce or somebody else does, but typically you do. I want to be able to give them advice on how they can make their future better. Because as we've talked about many a times here, all the things that we do in bookkeeping leading up to presenting the financial statements are historical. And that's great. That's important. We have to do that, right? But that's the base. And where where we want to take it is to the level of interpreting that information or being able to explain it in terms that our clients actually get. And once we've done that, then we can offer them advice. So that's what I mean by advice. So that could be, people say, hey, it's ratio analysis. No, right? That might be a tool that you use. But what it is saying, hey, you know what? I noticed that your salaries are 28%. Well, I know that your industry, they should be 23%. So that means you're over by 5%. You're $1 million a year business. So that's potentially $50,000 more that you could make. Let's dive into this and see how we could get your salaries in line. Is it that you're not making enough money? Is it that you're overpaying people? You have too many people? Whatever the case may be. But that's a simple observation. Now, it's based upon your experience, and obviously you should be compensated for it. But that's really what I mean by advisory services. Don't complicate this more than it is. But I'll tell you, let's talk about what you need to have in place before you start with advisory services, okay? So what you have to have in place is the ability to produce financial statements in a consistent, right, and timely and accurate manner, right? Consistent, timely, and accurate manner. So if your client is not getting you information, they're one of those that drag their feet, well, first of all, fire their ass. And second thing, you can't really offer advisory services to them because it needs to be accurate and it needs to be fresh. If we're making decisions today based on financial information 3 months or 6 months ago, that's not a good place to be operating from because things change. And so just as a rule of thumb, don't work with those people who drag their feet. And, we can talk about how to transition over to more quality clients in a different segment. But what we really want to focus on here is that we have the ability to produce those financial statements. And here's what I mean by the financial statements. I don't want to take anything for granted. I mean that you're producing a balance sheet, an income statement, don't call it a P&L, a balance sheet, an income statement, and a statement of cash flows. Now, that means that you need to understand the statement of cash flows and you need to understand the balance sheet and the income statement. And we'll actually do a segment on those as well when we kind of do have a more deep dive so that we understand it, so that we can take that understanding, we can take our wisdom and our experience and our battle scars, and then we offer up advice to our clients. So first and foremost, you've got to be able to produce those consistent, timely, and accurate manner, the financial statements to your client. Now, the second thing that you need to have before you start offering advisory services is an eager client. And what I mean by eager is that they want to improve their business. They are interested in making more money. They're interested in being a better steward with their money, whatever that you want to call it, because we don't want to try to shove a square peg into a round hole. We want to make sure that our client is receptive to the idea, that they want the advice, that they want you to give them that information, and that they're also, guess what, willing to pay for it. Okay. Now, pricing of advisory services, we'll go into that here in just a minute, but it's important that you get paid for this. If you're making your client money, right, and then you are getting rewarded for that, that's true what's called value billing. Value billing is not a fixed fee. Say you're charging $1,200 a month to prepare financial statements. That is not value billing. That is called fixed price. Okay. So make sure that you're using the same terms. Value billing would be saying, hey, I saved you $50,000. I took a percentage of that, 10%. That's value billing. Now, of course, we can't do that when we're talking about tax advice, but we're not talking about tax advice. We're simply talking about the advisory services that you do. So you got to have that receptive client. You got to have them that they're ready to pay. You got to have the financial statements, and you got to have a business that's doing pretty well. This is not something that you want to offer to the $100,000 or even maybe the $500,000 a year businesses. I would say that you're looking at 7-figure plus businesses. Now, I know a lot of you are saying, I don't work with those type of businesses. Well, you should be. And you should be pursuing those. And in your marketing, which is outside of what we're talking about here today, you should be targeting your message to those clients. They need you, okay? Especially if you're offering up these advisory services. But just like, Rome wasn't built in a day. I think that's the saying right there. You are not going to do this overnight. You're not going to transition from just preparing financial statements to offering up advisory services. But the first step in that is for you to make sure that your financial statement preparation process is down. Okay. And we actually have a segment where we talk about processes, how you document those, et cetera, et cetera. But when it comes to the advisory services, let's make sure that we have that solid foundation. Financial statements on our part, timely, accurate, and consistent, and that we have a willing client in there. Now, let's go back to pricing on this sort of thing. Now, the pricing, you can do value billing, you can do hourly billing, you can do fixed fee billing. But what we really want to do is that we don't want to think first and foremost about how much money can we make. We want to think in terms of how much money or how much help and value can I give to my client. It's all about putting value into the marketplace. And I'll tell you, presenting the financial statements on a timely, accurate, consistent manner, that's a little bit of value, right? That's good. A lot of bookkeepers and accountants can't do that. A lot of clients can't do that, obviously. So just by doing that, that's a little bit of value, right? It could be a lot of value. Value is in the eye of the beholder, and the beholder here is your client. So we're delivering that value. We're thinking from that perspective, how could I truly help my client? Now, one key that you have to do, and we're still kind of on the topic of pricing here, but we have to separate the financial statement preparation side of things and the advisory services side of things. So if you are the only person preparing the financial statements, you're a one-person shop, then it's important that you do this the correct way. And here's what I mean. We have our minds, our brains in one mode when we're preparing financial statements. When we're interpreting them, we have our brain in a different mode. And when we're advising, we're in a totally different mode. So we have to be able to delineate between the preparation side, the interpretation side, and the advisory side of things. So you might call this a cold review, setting it aside. The trick here, if it's just you, is that you still have to do it on a timely basis, but don't go straight from preparing the financial statements, doing all your due diligence, doing your quality control, and then immediately go into interpretation and analysis. You have to let your brain kind of get away from that for a little bit so that you can come back with a fresh set of eyes. We should be doing that also with our review of financial statements, especially if we were a one-person shop. But we need to make sure that we're doing this at separate times. Also, a little trick, a little hack that I'll tell you is that advisory services takes a lot of brain power. I know that we can get stuck in kind of like the reconciliation and the preparing of financial statements. We've been doing it for a long time, and we kind of get comfortable with it. Well, with this, we can never get comfortable with it, so to speak. We need to make sure that we are giving it our best. And so what I would advise you to do, a little alliteration there, advise you to do when you're doing advisory is to say, when am I at my best? When is my brain most active or at its sharpest? Let's just say it that way. And for me, I know that after about an hour after I awake and for the next 3 to 4 hours, I am at my sharpest. I'm not sharpest when I first wake up. I'm not sharpest late in the afternoon. So what you want to do is you want to take, when you're doing those advisory services, and you want to do them in that time where you have the best brain power, because it does require that. And also, I would recommend, going aside from advisory services, that you do this with anything in your business that is requiring brain power. So don't answer emails, don't return phone calls that are simple ones when you're at your best, when you're at your sharpest. Do that when you're not. Everybody is different. You probably know when you're at your sharpest. Some people say, hey, I'm best at 11 at night. And some people, I'm 11 at morning, whatever the case may be. It's usually about a 3 to 4 hour window. If you have more than that and you're a superman, a superwoman, I'd like to know what you do. A little trick for me is that if I start getting kind of tired mentally, then I'll go to the gym or run. Need to do a little bit more these days, but I'll go there and it gives me another spurt, probably about an hour afterwards, just because the endorphins and things like that. But advisory services, they are key to our future, right? We call ourselves 21st century bookkeeping professionals, and that's one of the hallmarks of what we do, interpreting and giving out those advisory services. Now, we'll talk about some specific advisory services in later episodes. I like to keep these short and punchy because I really want you to have attention on this, because this is one of the critical things that you need to do to isolate yourself from artificial intelligence, from automation, and all of that jazz that's coming out. Okay, because we want to have fun, and this is the fun part of what we do, adding advisory services. So I want to thank you for listening to this. Again, this is Ben Robinson with I Love Bookkeeping, and I'll see you in the next segment. Head on over to ilovebookkeeping.com. There, you're going to find all of the shows, the notes, and some other great goodies that we have for you there. Now, if you'd like to be a guest on the I Love Bookkeeping show, there is a link that says Be a Guest. Go in there and we'll walk you through the process of getting on the show. And finally, to discover more about our programs, go to the courses page on the ilovebookkeeping.com site. There you have it, another great episode of I Love Bookkeeping. Thank you for being a proud listener, and thank you for being a bookkeeping professional. Enjoy the rest of your week.
I love bookkeeping. Here's a little shout to all my friends working hard at keeping the books. You want to change your life, you want to grow